Obama administration regulations, including a rule that threatens to wipe out thousands of jobs in coal country. With a vote in the Senate and a signature by the President, we will be able to bring immediate relief to those workers. And this is just the start. In the weeks ahead, we will act on more resolutions to deliver relief from excessive regulations. When you think about the fact that the Obama administration was issuing major regulations at a rate of 1 every 3 days, this is real sea change. This is job creation. We also continue to act on a step-by-step approach to repeal and replace Obamacare. Yesterday, the Energy and Commerce Committee, they held a legislative hearing on 3 bills to improve Medicaid. Today, the committee is holding a legislative hearing on another 4 bills to provide relief from collapsing markets. In 2009, President Obama said, and I quote, "My guiding principle is that consumers do better when there is choice and competition," close quote. I couldn't agree more. That is the way Obamacare was sold, but that is not how it has turned out. In fact, choice and competition have dropped so much in our health insurance markets that 1/3 of all the counties in America today have only one insurer to choose from. 5 states, one insurer to choose from. That is not a choice. That is a monopoly. On top of that, another monopoly or a duopoly. President Obama was right. Consumers do better when they have choice and competition. Right now, they have neither. Instead, they're paying a whole lot more for less every single day under this law. That is why we have to step in. This law is collapsing. We have to rescue people from the failure of this law, and that is why, step by step, we're going to keep our promise to repeal and replace this law so that consumers can do better and so that they can have more choices. Questions?
Speaker Ryan, 2 religion questions.
2 religion questions?
Religion questions. Religious and related questions.
Are you going to wait till Sunday, or are you?
The prayer breakfast this morning, and the president said that he wants to get rid of the Johnson Amendment. Is that?
I've long believed that. Yeah, I've always supported that.
And the other, would you support a religious freedom executive order if it allowed discrimination against gays and lesbians?
I'm not sure you're familiar. I'm not familiar with what you're talking about, so I'm going to pass on that.
There's a lot of talk about the possibility of
we don't want the Little Sisters for the Poor to be forced to buy coverage that violates their conscience. If you're talking about that, then I'm full support. Casey.
2 questions also, if I may. First, there's been reports of a very difficult call between the President and the Prime Minister of Australia. Now John McCain has called the Australian ambassador. Do you think that what McCain did was the right move? And what would you say to President Trump about...
Don't know about the veracity of those reports. Don't know about the content of the call, or even, I didn't hear about John McCain until what you just said. I know Prime Minister Turnbull. He was in my office a couple months ago. He's a very important ally. Australia is a very essential ally. They are, and they will continue to be. I think it's important that presidents and prime ministers, heads of state, are able to have candid and private conversations with one another.
My second question. The President also referenced Arnold Schwarzenegger today at the prayer breakfast, and Schwarzenegger has
did he do the accent?
They should switch jobs.
Say that again?
Schwarzenegger tweeted to the President that perhaps they should switch jobs. Trump should return to The Apprentice.
Yeah.
He should be president of the United States.
I'm not going to comment on this stuff. Let's talk about policy. Let me go in the back.
Sir, you often mention about choice in healthcare. Is there some particular model you have in mind for that? I mean, most employer-based health programs have one, maybe two choices for insurance. I mean, what is the model for that you would point to?
Yeah, the model is the plan we ran on last year that you can go to better.gop and take a look at. What we think is you want to have a vibrant individual market, a vibrant employer market. We want Medicaid to work. We want Medicaid to work so that the states can innovate and so that doctors actually take Medicaid patients. We want Medicare to be solvent. We want Medicare to be something you can depend on and know that it's going to be there when you retire. So what we mean is choices. We don't want one choice. That's not a choice. We want to have more insurers and providers in the marketplace competing against each other for our business as consumers and patients. We want patients and their doctors being the driving force and the nucleus of the healthcare system instead of some government regulator telling you what you have to buy, where you have to buy it. We don't want just one insurer. We want a lot of insurers competing for our business. That's what I mean when I say choice. And the whole point of all of this is it's the cornerstone of the free enterprise system in America. The more choices you have, the more competition there is, consumers benefit from that. And that is obviously true in healthcare, and it is one of the big reasons why Obamacare is collapsing. Look, you heard me say how few choices and options there are because of Obamacare. It is not coincidental then that we have double-digit premium increases every year, that the deductibles for Obamacare exchange plans are 3 times as high as the deductibles for people in the large group insurance market that they get the health and care from their jobs. So clearly this law isn't working, it is collapsing, and yes, this is what we call a death spiral. You're not getting the kind of pooling that needs to be allowed with choice and competition to get rates down. So we had to step in and replace this law before it gets too late, before people lose what their insurance.
Can I ask you about all this discussion about the word repair that you guys are starting to use?
Yeah, the words you're talking about.
The words.
Right.
There's been some pushback on that, and Nancy Pelosi just said you guys are having a vocabulary change. The allegation there that you're intentionally rebranding this. Can you respond to that?
No, I'd say there's just a miscommunication or a misinterpretation of what we're trying to say. Our job is to repair the American healthcare system and rescue it from the collapse that it's in. And the best way to repair our healthcare system is to repeal and replace Obamacare. It's not an either or. If you want to repair the American healthcare system, you've got to repeal the law that is destroying it and replace it with a system that's much better. Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Lisa from the PBS NewsHour. Can you give
Hey,
us,
thanks for.
Yeah.
I know most of you, but thank you for saying we are.
can you give us an update on the timeline for the Affordable Care Act next step? I talked to Chairman Upton. He said he wasn't sure exactly when his committee was going to be moving language. And then also a follow-up to Nancy's question. Do you believe that businesses should be allowed to refuse service based on sexual identity or sexual orientation?
No, I voted for ENDA 2004 or something like that. I can't remember when that
But
bill
if it's
was.
based on religious grounds?
So, no, I just don't believe in discrimination in the workplace, period. But back to your healthcare point, what was your healthcare question?
The timeline.
The timeline, yeah. So I'll defer to the chairman when he wants to have his markups, but we want to be moving our Obamacare legislation by the end of the first quarter. Yeah.
Do you support capping the exclusions for employer-sponsored plans?
I always have. That's something, there's no secret. The bills I put in place, I had a bill with Tom Coburn, Devin Nunes, and Richard Burr when we were debating Obamacare that did that. So my own position is very clear. Where Congress goes on this is an open question on that thing. That's one of the ways you can finance tax credits. There are a lot of other ways of financing tax credits as well. Yeah.
You obviously spoke out forcefully last year about the Muslim ban. I'm wondering if you're totally comfortable right now with Trump's executive order and the provisions that give preferential treatment to minority religion.
That's a good question, because this is not a Muslim ban. If it were, I would be against it. We are a tolerant, pluralistic country. We are and we will be. It's really important. The bill we passed last year, if you recall, after the Paris shooting, it became clear to us that one of the terrorists infiltrated the refugee population coming from Syria. So we wanted to make sure that didn't happen here in this country. That's just sort of like national security 101. And then when we inquired among our professionals at Homeland Security and the FBI, can you properly vet these people to make sure that this doesn't happen in America? They said, no, we can't. And so that's why we passed legislation with 289 votes, big bipartisan bill, saying let's pause this program until we can figure out how to get it right. That's effectively what this is about. So to your point about religious persecution, presidents always and often put preferences in refugee populations. I think President Obama had one for sexual orientation. They didn't call that a sexual orientation test. He put a preference in for sexual orientation. Religious minorities who are being persecuted, there's nothing wrong with preferring religious minorities from persecution. Yazidis are being persecuted. Sunnis in Shia countries are being persecuted. Christians are being persecuted. So there's nothing wrong with saying we're going to take into account minority religious persecution with our refugee situation. Chad.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What about, though, and this alludes to the question about Australia, deals with the question here with the executive order, what about the perception overseas? And do you have concerns?
Yeah, no, of course I do. Of course I do.
As a Muslim ban?
I think
people say he did get into the grill of the Australian Prime Minister.
I think, well, like I said, I didn't even read the transcript, so I can't speak to the
but
president's.
That's a perception issue. Even if that's not true, there's a perception
issue. But I do think that there is a perception issue, and I think this loose rhetoric that suggests that this is a religious test or a Muslim ban is wrong because it furthers that perception, because this is not that. So I do think it's important for people to pause and look at the actual context of this. Look at the press conference that Secretary Kelly had to put this in its proper perspective so that it is not misinterpreted as being something that it is not.
But isn't the point, he had to have that press conference to do that? He had to give that statement Sunday afternoon
I said this
because it
on
was
Tuesday,
all-
I think the rollout could have been done a lot better. So, look, green card holders, I mean, nobody wanted green card holders to get caught up in this. So I think that, yes, the rollout could have been done much better. I think we all know that. But going forward, let's make sure that we're not saying this is something that it's not, so that we further misperceptions.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, regarding Rex Tillerson.
Tell me who you are.
Andrew Feinberg with RIA Global Newswires. Regarding Rex Tillerson's confirmation, are you concerned that now that he's through the Senate and the State Department, that the Trump administration will now try and roll back sanctions on Russia?
Well, my position on sanctions are pretty clear. I think Rex Tillerson is going to be a great Secretary of State. I think people who don't know him or haven't followed him very closely are going to be pleasantly surprised. This is a very, very capable man, and I think he's a good model for Secretary of State. I don't know what their policy is going to be with Russia. I'm a Russia hawk. I think the sanctions should have been done a while ago.
Do you think that
Hey, Sherman.
Do you think a lot of this stuff you talk about the rollout, if this came through Congress, wouldn't this have been a more smooth process? And
Are you talking about the executive order?
Yeah.
Yeah, I obviously think that they could have done a better job on the rollout of the executive order. I think that they don't even have a full cabinet in place yet. So I think it's pretty important to get their cabinet up and running so that these interagency reviews can be done well. And I think going forward, they're going to do a better job of these things. Yeah.
Speaker, I'm Stephanie March from Australian Broadcasting. Donald Trump tweeted this morning that he's going to review this so-called dumb deal with Australia. That's the first we've heard from the President directly about what's been a very confusing series of messages from the White House and the State Department and Australia. Is it problematic that this is the way diplomacy is being conducted, and should Australia be worried about its relationship with this new president?
No, I don't think Australia should be worried about its relationship with our new president or with our country for that matter. I know your country well. I've met with your leaders continuously over the last number of years. So no, Australia is a very important, essential ally. It's going to continue to be. You haven't maybe been to many press conferences. I typically don't quote or comment on the tweet of the hour. So.
Last question.
Unappropriate.
Oh no, Laura, Wall Street Journal, sorry.
Do you think that additional sanctions should be placed on Iran, and would you have any?
I would be in favor of additional sanctions on Iran. I think I'd like to put as much toothpaste back in the tube as possible. I think the last administration appeased Iran far too much. I think they went too far with Iran, and I think as a result, Iran is far more activist than it otherwise would be. Iran, don't forget, is the largest, greatest sponsor of terrorism in the world, the biggest state sponsor of terrorism in the world. Iran writes on their missiles in Farsi, Hebrew, and English, death to America, death to Israel, and then tests them. So this is not a friendly country that has global peace or national security interests in their mind. So yeah, I think we need to have a tough on Iran policy.
But do you have any concerns that that could cause the nuclear agreement to?
I think we should stop appeasing Iran.